Welcome, welcome, welcome to a wonderful, wonderful show. Now, come on, Mr. Simmer down. We've all seen the new frock. And you, sir. Try and pretend you're not drunk, okie dokie. Now, come on, I want you to welcome on stage now, Rachel Ashley's Your Turn.
This week I've got as a guest an absolute legend from South Wales, from the valleys, I think, you'll correct me if that's not right, to being an internationally, globally famous campaigner. It's the one and only Stephen Bray. Yay! Hi, Steve.
Hey, hello everyone, and it's great to be here talking to Rachel.
I'm thrilled that you've decided you've chosen to come on here, because I know that you've had a really, really busy few weeks with the court case, which must have been incredibly stressful, and we'll come to that. But for now, when you were a little boy, when you were 8, say, for example, did you have any idea that you'd spend your days standing outside Parliament shouting at people and being globally famous?
No, infamous maybe, but I would say when I was 8, I had absolutely no idea that I would be stood in front of Parliament. It was an interesting time growing up. My dad was in the forces, so moved around, lived in England, lived in Germany, various Air Force bases.
And do you think that gave you a pro-European kind of outlook from a very early age?
I do, in a way, yes. But I when they announced the referendum, I wasn't, like most people, we weren't fully aware of our true integration within the European Union and what it would mean. And the more I looked at it, literally within half an hour, I realised they were lying through their teeth.
Right.
You know, the Brexit campaign. And I thought, it's the poorest people that are going to pay for it. And I live in Port Talbot, which is one of the poorest communities in Wales. I think only Merthyr Tydfil is poorer. And these people were convinced to vote to leave, and their lives were only going to be made worse. So, that was kind of my starting point.
How come you realised and other people didn't? What is it about you, do you think?
I think I could see through these politicians straight away. You only had to see how they manipulated things over the years. And being members of the European Union, we had such a much better life.
Yeah.
I think everyone will appreciate that now. I've met so many people that voted to leave that say, "Oh, sorry, Steve," didn't agree with it at the time.
And do you people, that actually happens a lot, does it? That leavers come up to you and say, "Oh, blimey, mate, you were right."
It does. I've even had a few of the early day, right? We used to get a hard time when we were down at Parliament. People like Goddard and his crew. I've had a couple of them come up to me, shake my hand and say, "Sorry we give you a hard time, Steve."
Oh, wow. Oh, well, fair play to them then. Because, when we know better, we do better. It's the people that double down and refuse to kind of accept that maybe, just maybe, we were right all along, the Remainers. It's difficult. But how many of those people in Port Talbot now are falling for Nigel Farage all over again, do you think?
That is a very good question.
Thank you.
No. All Remainers know Nigel Farage. They know the grift. I mean, the guy is still taking his European pension. How's that for hypocritical?
Wow, I didn't know that. But yes,
he was an MEP and he gets a pension and he happily takes that money.
Wow. Yeah, the hypocrisy is off the scale, isn't it?
It is. And he was a fisheries minister, but apparently he only went into the office 4 times in about 5 or 6 years.
Wow. And yet that doesn't seem to get inside the brains of people who think that he's only saying what we're all thinking. Well, he's not saying what I'm thinking.
No, exactly. The problem we've got with the political system we have at the moment is primarily, for me, is like first past the post. It's not working for us, but it does work for the politicians.
It does.
And the United Kingdom, we have so many career politicians that don't look beyond their desks. Don't look, that they, from all parties. I'm not just saying it's Conservative reform. I think we have a problem with career politicians. We have a problem with first past the post.
Yeah.
And, we are crying out for the real change. Labour stood on the platform of change. Yeah. I haven't seen it yet.
That's really, really depressing, isn't it? I mean, it's really depressing.
It is. I was full of hope when Starmer stood up a couple of weeks before the general election. He said, "I promise you I will do the best for the country. We will put country before party." And I thought, right, great, we're back in.
And unfortunately, what he's doing now is acting as a recruitment drive for reform, because people have just lost all faith in politicians. And when people lose faith and lose hope, that's when things get really, really sticky.
It is. That brings us to the other problem, the lack of choice between parties, As it stands at the moment, I'm kind of a lib-lab green, independent, anything bar, reform and conservative. So, I like a little bit of all of the policies from centre left to left. And maybe parties should work together now for the future of the United Kingdom.
Well, of course, if we had proportional representation, the system would force them to, wouldn't it?
It would, yes. Yeah, definitely. And I've in many tweets over the years, I've spoken about proportional representation and what it could mean. That would bring real change. And it means parties would have to work together. Yeah. They would have to compromise. It works in Europe.
It works most places, in fact.
Yeah.
And the idea of collaboration, most people, I think, understand from their own day-to-day lives that collaboration is generally considered to be a good thing, not a bad thing. The way that, basically what they're doing is divide and rule all the time, isn't it? That you have to choose a side.
Exactly.
And if you're on this side, then you hate all of the people on that side. And that means that any kind of nuance, any kind of sensible debate, any sharing of ideas, any kind of collaboration, it's all discouraged in that kind of adversarial system. And even the way that Parliament is set out, I believe that the central floor in Parliament is 2 swords long, or just more than 2 swords long. So the very fabric of our system, the buildings themselves are adversarial and conflictual, aren't they? And I think that doesn't serve anybody's purpose, apart from, as you say, the career politicians.
They are. You only have to look at PMQs. It's like a bloody football match.
Well, it's theatre, isn't it? It's ridiculous.
It is. But when you talk to these people in the street, they're not prepared. So they don't have the performance that you see in Parliament.
No.
And in all the years I've been at Parliament, I never realised what a bunch of misfits we have running the country sometimes.
Isn't it
and it
just
makes me
true?
wonder, who votes for these people? If people knew what they were really like, they would never be voted for.
No.
They're just, obviously, they're thrown in, some people are thrown into a safe seat. I'll give you an example. Andrew Griffiths, Tory MP. Now, when Boris Johnson was doing his leadership campaign, Andrew Griffiths lent him his £10 million pad just at the bottom of Parliament Green, the Green. And in return, Boris Johnson gave him a safe seat. And he's still an MP today.
But you see, that to me, that's corrupt.
course it is. You know,
And
Andrew
yet,
Griffiths.
there are never any consequences.
Andrew Griffiths would never be an MP on his own merit,
Of course
ever.
not. Of course not.
And he was, I think, junior, or he was a Treasury Minister for the Conservatives.
Mm.
And under his watch, obviously, there was COVID and all the misdemeanors, the VIP lanes. And the issue I have with that now is finally the buck has been passed to us.
Yeah.
We are all paying the price in increased taxes.
Yes, we are.
You know, they froze the personal allowance up until 2029, as far as I'm aware, which Labour could have reversed,
Yeah.
but they didn't.
Mm.
And I'll tell you what really strikes me about Labour. Before Keir Starmer said, "Oh, we're not going to rejoin the EU in my lifetime," and he said on over 20 occasions, "We're not going to rejoin, we're not doing this," you know, you should campaign on what you are going to do. And if you promise to put country before party, you can't say things like, "We're not going to rejoin in my lifetime."
No. And especially not now that Donald Trump is in the White House, because that changes everything. And Starmer has to choose between the US and Donald Trump and the European Union. It's that stark. And politics is rarely that stark, but currently it really is that stark. It really is.
And Brexit has backed us into a corner because the United States, you know, in all of our trade, I don't believe it wasn't even a small percentage of our trade with the European Union. Who wants hormone-injected beef and chlorinated chicken?
Well, exactly. You know? Yeah, exactly. Nobody does.
Exactly. Yeah, not only that, I mean, their automotive industry is totally different. You know, people import American cars, but they're very. There's not that many.
No, they're very niche, aren't they? They're kind of collectors kind of things.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah.
Talking about collecting things, you are a numismatist. Have I said that right?
I am, yes.
Now, a lot of people, I didn't know what one of those was until I met you. And now I do. How on earth did you get into that?
I started, it was when I lived in Germany, funnily enough. I think at the time, going back to about 1975, I think it was. Yeah. I went carol singing, so I had a little piggy bank with me. It was to raise money. It was a school thing, you know. I went around with a couple of friends. We had a tin to collect money. When I got back home, I emptied it out, and there were lots of foreign coins in there. You know, I was expecting Deutschmarks at the time.
Yeah.
Belgium, coins from Belgium, Holland, France, lots of European coins, funnily enough. And I was fascinated by the designs, although I didn't really understand the currencies at the time. And from that moment on, my coin collecting days began.
And so you're an expert. So all of those people that shout back at you and say that you're unemployed and all, it's a lie, isn't it?
It is.
People, it's a lie. Hey, guess what? Politicians lying. So that is your business, isn't it? You deal in coins, presumably rare ones.
I deal predominantly in British coinage from 1551, which was Edward VI, the Boy King, who's the son of Henry VIII, and I go up to present day.
Well, that's incredible because, anybody that knows anything at all about history will also know how that actually ties into Brexit in a myriad of really complicated ways. And Henry VIII, of course, was a version of Brexit, wasn't he?
Absolutely, and the coins that fascinate me most in my collection. I mean, I've got a 1658 crown of Cromwell.
Fantastic!
We all know what happened there.
Yeah.
I also have from the same era, between 1649 and 1658, well, 1660 actually, when Charles II came back from France, all the coinage was Commonwealth of England.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
I didn't know that.
there is no monarch on the coin. So Charles II came back in 1660, and he was crowned in 1662.
Right.
Um,
And so through your numismatism, is that a word?
mhm.
It is ism.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're actually quite a learned historian as well, aren't you? Via that.
All of my history comes from my coin collecting.
You see, this is exactly the point of this entire series of podcasts. People just don't know this about you. And it's absolutely fascinating. It really, really is interesting. And this is the whole point. So thank you for sharing that. And you obviously are incredibly well informed. And you know your onions when it comes to coins, which is fantastic.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, so one of the big things, so on the Friday after the referendum, you woke up, or maybe you'd stayed up all night.
I was up all night.
Yeah. So you cared, you cared then. It wasn't something,
Yeah.
a lot of people kind of came to the campaign in 2018, 2019, but you were there from the off.
I was there from the off. I was arguing with friends on Facebook just as the referendum was announced,
Right.
because they were all, it turned out, they were all far right and racist.
Oh, dear.
So, these were people I'd known for years, and I was shocked at their views, but it really did bring people out of the woodwork.
Yes, it did, didn't it?
But the unfortunate thing about the referendum, and it still reverberates today, it divided friends, neighbours, families,
Yeah.
communities,
Yeah.
towns, cities. The irony is that the cities with the most immigration, the people that live, work together, they all voted to remain. Like Cardiff is a very integrated city, very diverse.
Yeah.
Voted to remain.
Yeah.
Swansea, on the other hand, was one of the rare cities that voted to leave. They were being conned in the way of, there were a lot of stories at the time, which I believe stemmed from Russian interference.
Well, this is going to be another one of my. I've got so many questions for you, Steve. I can't tell you.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, how much planning do you think, and how organised do you think that the far right is globally?
Globally, the problem we have is the far right are so much better funded than us.
Yeah.
It is, for me, just to put it in a simple nutshell, it is the wealthiest cheating the poorest into going along with them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening, isn't it? I sometimes think that maybe the next revolution will also be global. which would be interesting.
Well, look, I mean, you look at the state of the world at the moment. The last thing the world needed was Trump as president.
Yeah.
And you've got Elon. I actually say at Parliament, the United States of America has a new president, Elon Musk, and his sidekick Donny.
Yeah, I think that most people think that Donald Trump is merely a puppet in a very similar way to the way that Johnson was appeared to be a puppet. A populist, very charismatic. When I was canvassing at the 2019 election, a lot of people would say to me on the doorstep, "Oh, he seems like a really fun guy. I can imagine going for a pint with him." That's not a really good reason to vote for somebody, but that was their motivation. And,
well, exactly. Well, apparently Adolf Hitler was very amiable too.
Yes. I've heard that Rupert Murdoch is fantastic company at parties. Doesn't make him a nice guy, does it?
We are harking back to the 1930s. I know people don't like to hear that, but we are not. The world now is in the most precarious position it has been ever.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And we know where it leads, and one day someone will look back and say this was the beginning of whatever.
Yeah.
But it is a beginning. We are entering a new era, and we need to think about future generations more.
Absolutely. Well, we've all got kids. A lot of us have got kids, grandchildren, and it's not
Yeah,
just for us; it's for them that we're doing this. But
exactly.
let's talk about you. You are now phenomenally famous. Which,
Oh, God.
well, you are.
Infamous.
How has that been for you? Because fame is its own currency, isn't it? Fame is a very
Yeah,
powerful currency as
yeah.
well. And everybody knows who you are, but you're the kind of
Well,
famous person that there is a very strong tradition of in the UK.
uh-huh.
And so you're actually historically how weird must this be? And I'd be dead keen to hear your perspective on this, because from the outside looking in, do you have any idea just how
No,
famous you are?
not really. No, I mean, I'll take my hat off and I can go anywhere. I
Oh,
like
fair
that.
enough. Yeah, yeah.
But when the hat's on, it's like I don't know how to describe it. You take on this character that
A
makes a
persona.
stand.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I've always been a fighter, and I always will be. Unfortunately, it's in my nature.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
the injustice of the situation that is that a driver for you?
it is. It's the injustice. But you know what drove me most at Parliament?
Mm.
Those that spurred me on, that loved what we do and the protest, because it's not just me. It's
Oh
Sodom.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
group.
yeah.
There's people come and go, and um, but it's been the haters have driven me on as much as the supporters.
I wonder if they know that. Shush, let's not tell them.
Oh no! Don't say a thing. Don't say a thing. And the trolls on social media have been fantastic. I love what they write,
Yeah.
because it just makes me want to get out even more.
All right. Well, we won't tell them that. We'll just let them keep
No,
doing it.
no,
And of course,
we
you
won't mention it.
famously have like really big run-ins with very, very high-profile politicians. Who's been your
Yeah,
favourite
yeah.
fight?
Oh,
Lee Anderson's got to be up there.
I'd say the six bob knob, 30p Lee, Acker, Trigger. Yeah, he's got lots of nicknames. I would say he's one of my biggest adversaries, but now he's gone to reform. He's kind of disappeared.
Oh right, okay.
I know he popped up after the court case to say I'm a parasite and blah blah blah. And he says all his things, but that's Lee Anderson for you. He wants to get some news, and the only way he can get it, that at the moment, is by attacking me.
Right, which is tragic, really, isn't it? So it's literally attention-seeking behaviour. He's
Um,
a toddler.
he is, and he's throwing his toys out of the pram as often as he can.
On the other hand, there must have been, because you come across politicians all the time, and very, very
Yeah.
high-profile politicians, who is worthy of our respect, in your opinion?
Oh, now there's a difficult question.
Not
I do
many
like
of them.
Peter Kyle. I do like Peter Kyle.
Fair enough, yeah.
Unfortunately, I used to like a lot of the Labour MPs, but they avoid me like the plague now.
Are they frightened of being put on the
Well,
spot?
they do not want to talk about Brexit.
Which tells me that they know.
Of course they know.
Yeah.
100%. They just... they used to fall over themselves to talk to me. They wanted to get... it's... You only need to look at what happened to the WASPy ladies.
Yeah.
Labour MPs would go out, march with them, stand with them. When push comes to shove, Labour in government, WASPy ladies, goodbye.
It's so
kind
disappointing, isn't it?
It is. They've let a lot of people down, but I haven't given up hope.
Okay. I mean, do you think that there's stuff going on
because-
in the background that we're not party to?
I do believe that. But
But what
there's
form it
only
takes?
it's only so long Labour can keep saying, we're trying to get closer alignment. Well, they've been in now, what, 9 months,
Yeah.
8 months.
It's coming. Well, yeah, we're looking at a year,
Yeah,
aren't
yeah.
we? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they've only got 5 years, and the way things are going, they're not going to win the next general election.
No, they're
They
not.
need more than, unfortunately, Labour need more than 5 years,
Well, they
and,
do.
and they're not, and they're not doing enough at the present time to even, get anywhere close.
And unfortunately, people are so out of hope that they're going to reform in droves. Although it had to be said that at their rally in Birmingham, I was surprised at how not busy it was. In fact, I was expecting it to be far busier, and it really wasn't.
I've seen these events. I've been outside some of Reform Party events. It's like a day out at Witherspoons,
But do you know what really struck me? And I'll choose my words quite carefully here. But all of the people that I saw in Birmingham were really unusual characters. That's the politest I can be.
I think that pretty much sums it up. Yes. I'm not. People that genuinely believe in reform, they politically they're lost.
Yeah.
In their own little worlds. That's the only way I can see it.
Yeah.
Because reform actually offer nothing. When you break down what Farage says, what Richard Tice says, I almost said Ben Habib. No, he's another loony. In my opinion, he's another loony. But he's not with Reform anymore. They got rid of him.
And the internal fighting is a joy to behold, isn't it?
It is. After that last run-in with Lee Anderson, I forgot. Rob Lowe posted the video that was posted, saying, they call me the bully. Look at this.
Oh wow, really? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh gosh.
Oh yeah. Rob Lowe actually posted it, and it got quite a bit of traction.
Oh wow,
that's... even Reform Party members saying, "Oh, he shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't assault somebody." And
if he does it again, just drop to the floor, football styley.
Yeah, there is that option, or
it's hard in the moment though when somebody's coming for you, isn't it?
It is, because I didn't even know if he was trying to knock my hat off or hit me in the face.
Well, exactly.
So
I
have to react distinctively.
Of course.
And I know there's a lot of police, so I can't exactly... The best defence is just to push him away.
Yes.
Which is exactly what I did.
And do you know what really, really hacked me off about that is that the police did nothing when he was coming for you. The minute you have an instinctive reaction, they're in there like a shot. And I'm like, well, where were you 30 seconds ago? Took your time. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
so
they were watching very keenly the whole event.
Yes, you could see that. And another thing that's profoundly unfair and is at the core of a lot of this, why aren't you ever on Question Time?
Oh, God, I'd be awful on Question
You wouldn't though, Steve. You're dead articulate.
I'm better off on the street.
Why aren't you ever on the newspaper reviews? Why do we never see you on our tellies? And
I think I'm not polished enough. I would say I'm not polished enough to kind of do those sort of things.
But you see, I've just been speaking to you for the best part of half an hour, and the conversation has flowed. You've been incredibly articulate. You know your onions. You know what you're talking about. Don't sell yourself short. But I know why they don't ask you on.
Oh, yeah. They probably get a one-sided view, but yeah.
Well, no, because they platform people like Isabel Oakeshott, like who even is she, endlessly. Endlessly.
But it's the same with Nigel Farage. They get platform. Even before 7 times he failed to be an MP, yet he's always, on these programmes. Question Time, any answers or any questions.
He's a permanent fixture.
He is, but they don't put the people on that ask the right questions.
Yes, it's almost as if we're being manipulated.
No, you don't say.
Do you know what, Steve? It's been an absolute joy. I like to keep these to 30 minutes, but we could actually keep going for another 30 minutes.
Well, we can do another episode.
We can. We'll
another
do
time.
another one another time. It's been an absolute delight. Loads of people have asked me to get you on, so I'm absolutely thrilled that we've had this conversation. Now, and we've not even covered Rees-Mogg being your next door neighbour, offering you a cup of sugar and all of that stuff. So we'll save that.
Next time.
Yeah, we'll save that for part 2.
Now you mentioned Rees-Mogg, I've just done a post on Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been away from social media a bit. Whilst this court case was going on.
Well,
anyway,
yes, I did want to mention that as well. It's dead important, that, because winning that court, we'll go over time for that. That court case was about all of us and our democracy. So thank you from me and everybody that I know. Thank you for doing that. It's really important that we have the right to protest. Really important.
Absolutely, and at the seat of power, that is the most critical place to protest.
Yeah.
And whatever side of the fence people are on, whatever their views, whatever their protest, whether we agree with it or not, that victory in court was for everyone.
Yeah. But that must have been dead stressful for you.
It was very stressful, I'll be honest. And I hid a lot of it.
Yeah, and you can only imagine that anything like that it will impact things like sleeping and eating and your general mental well-being and because they do, and so to win that case must have been an epic relief for you.
It was, and it's nice that it's behind us, but it now gives us a footing to go forward at Parliament, and the amps will be back on the island.
Good. And this brings us beautifully to your choice of music. And, everybody in the world remembers this. Your choice of music, of course, is Things Can Only Get Better by D-Ream.
Of course it is.
Which is fantastic.
And they got invited to Glastonbury off the back of that.
Did they really?
They did, yes.
I didn't know that. Well, there you go, you see. I hope they said thank you to you.
They actually sent some money to the crowdfunder to buy a new amp.
Oh, well, good. Well, they should have funded several new amps for all of the ones that the police keep taking. Steve, it's been an absolute delight and a pleasure. And we're going to finish with D-Ream. Things Can Only Get Better. Thanks, Steve. Can only get better. Can only get, take it all from me, I know that things can only get better. I sometimes lose myself in me. I lose track of time, and I can't see the woods for the trees. You set them alive, burn the bridges as you go. I'm doing too far, I got my personal hell to deal with. And then you say, walk my path with my shoes, talk like that.